here we go, a solo CM with no mega rares. Previously in a no mega rare run, we went for the master combat achievement time, that being 45 minutes. Now, first things first, we are using a Dragon Warhammer right now, and I want to emphasize that because last time around on our master combat achievement run, we did use an Elder Maw, which technically is a mega rare, but that's just because it shares the same drop table as the Twisted Bow here at Chambers of Xerix. Let's be realistic here and use our noggin. When people are talking about the mega rare weapons, they're definitely talking about the Twisted Bow, the Scythe of Vidr, and the Tunican Shadow, especially in the context of going for speed CAs. I mean, what's an Elder Maw really going to do? Like, where does it truly make a difference than a hammer? Anyways, as we work on Tecton here with our Osmumthum's Fang, let's go over our gear setup a little bit more. So we are wearing full oath plate. I made the choice to do this rather than wear a torso or something like that because, for one thing, if you are going for combat achievements at this point, you're going to be pretty well versed in a lot of PVM content and you're going to be grinding the bosses a lot. So whether you're an Ironman or a normal account, I feel like Oathplate is not a stretch to be able to get if you're at that stage before getting a mega rare weapon. You might even have one or two if you did get really lucky at this point. Or, you know, you're just a really OG Ironman gamer and you did get your hands on one before the days of Yama were released. Or was released, I should say. So yeah, we do have full oath plate, and interestingly enough, that's going to make us put our Dragon Hunter Lance on Slash. So that's our melee gear paired with the Avernic Treads, the Amulet of Rancor, and the Ultor Ring. As far as our range gear goes, without a Twisted Bow, we're going to be using the Bofa Crystal setup, which is very, very typical. A lot of people do have this setup. As a main, you know, it's not overly expensive, and as an Ironman, we all know how important having this set of armor is. So we are going to be wearing full crystal. We got Barrow's gloves. I even made it a point to downgrade from Zerite Vambraces to Barrow's gloves, even though, let's be honest here, Zerite Vambraces don't actually do too much. As for our ring switches, I already mentioned we had the Ultor ring, and typically I'd be running a Mage's ring paired with all the other max mage gear, but because we're not using that, we have a light bear to regenerate spec. Our mage gear, as I touched on, no shadow, you know, no max mage, so we are downgrading from the shadow to the Sanguinesti staff. Now the Eye of Ayak is actually really easy to get, but I opted against using the Eye of Ayak personally because I actually don't know how to use it in a solo raid. I've never tried, I haven't learned yet. So the Sanguinesti staff is going to have to do. I'm very comfortable with the 4-tick 3-0 mage running method. We also have the Confliction Gauntlets from the Doom of Mocha as well. And then obviously the Occult, the Ceridome God Cape, and then we're wearing Aram's top and bottoms. I feel like an Ironman at this stage might have a Virtus piece or two, so that's going to be marginally better. And we do have the Ancestral Hat, which is a purple here in this raid, but I feel like if you're going to be doing challenge modes, you probably have a couple of purples from this raid already. So Ancestral Hat is one, and if we go down the inventory a little bit, we also do have the Dragon Hunter Crossbow and the Twisted Buckler. And you saw right there, we banked some items, the pickaxe, the salve, the fang, things of that nature that we don't need right now. And what we're doing here at Ice Demon is actually a little bit of a deviation from what I would typically do. Typically, I'd be farming the scavengers for resources, but we're skipping that portion, but we are going to be prepping in a little bit here. I did try to speed up the Ice Demon process here a little bit by lighting not only 2, but 3 braziers. Unfortunately, though, I was just kind of like fumbling the bag here, juggling our potions and whatnot. Our inventory wasn't what it should have been, and I did have to double back to pick up my potions. A little bit of a time loss. But here we go, we're farming Ice Demon, the Burning Claws. We dump all our spec here, and unfortunately we don't get the job done, so now I'm just claw scratching it. Hit a couple of zeros, and then in my head at the time I was thinking, should I just swap to the Bofa to finish it off? I don't know. So in not scavving, we make sure to pick up juice and mushrooms from Ice Demon. We end up getting 7 juice and 7 mushrooms there. We're definitely going to be making these 7 brews, and we're going to make a couple of restores. And we can definitely get away with not making any restores at all. We would just have to rely on our prayer enhance even more, and just be very careful of our prayer, do a little bit of flicking and whatnot. But I think I am going to make a few restores. Here at the shaman room, swapping from a 5-tick weapon to a 4-tick weapon, I think I was inadvertently 5-ticking my Bofa on occasion, which is not great. That is definitely DPS loss right there. But that's just a cost of doing all these different gear challenges and whatnot, switching up the gear. It's not something I'm typically doing, not a lot of reps with, so yeah, it's kind of like confusing to the muscle memory and all that. So here at Shamans, I think I max hit a 50, and you know, it was just a mental note. I'm like, wow, the power creep is insane with the Avernic Treads and the Quiver and things like that. I think in particular, the Avernic Treads probably gave me a max hit or 2. The Quiver, while, you know, obviously is best in slot, it's actually not that much of a difference if you're using the crystal setup still. This is because the Bofa has its own charges, and I don't know the specific details, but it doesn't get like the full effect because it uses its own ammo or whatever. So as I mentioned, we are going to be doing a small prep, and it's a bit more annoying because I didn't get any planks to upgrade the storage units. So we are going to have to drop some stuff on the ground, you see right there, and we are going to have to juggle stuff, you know, bank a couple of things, withdraw a couple of things, be a little bit more particular with it. We kept all our range and melee gear in our inventory because I don't believe we have the space to just deposit all. So this is what we're working with right here. I definitely panicked a little bit during this prep because typically I have a very standardized way of doing it, but this was like everything was different here. So here I am making a couple of restores, you know, dropping the mushrooms, don't need that anymore. I think I settled with 3 restores, which again is more than enough, but just to be sure, you know, made 3 restores. And then the 7 brews. Still trying to be a little bit efficient with my time here, as, you know, I'm making brews on my way to the next room. And that prep room right there was the perfect example. You know, everything was a bit of a mess. Things aren't where I'm used to it being. So everything is a little bit slower when it comes to inventory management, withdrawing these potions and the proper gear to get to Vanguards right now. Just a tad slower. It's, you know, a couple of seconds here and there. And even back in Ice Demon, when I was just running back and forth, you know, it does cost me a couple of seconds with each mistake like that, and it does add up. But I do believe we are pacing pretty well right now. Like back in the day, you know, a year or 2 ago, probably closer to 2 years now, or even longer than that actually, it would be crazy to get down to the Vanguards room sub 10 minutes with like a Bofa setup and things like that, like no mega rares, in my opinion anyways. This raid in general has definitely gotten a lot faster, which does leave me to believe that, you know, the GM time without a mega rare is very achievable without like insane strats, or like an incredible amount of skill. I feel like anything I'm doing in this run right now, like anybody could end up doing as long as they get enough reps in the raid. Now, heading into Vanguards here, you know, I had the expectation, I fully expected this room to take quite a bit longer because, you know, this room requires all 3 attack styles, and, You know, with a Sanguinesti staff on the melee Vanguard, it's not going to do too much damage, especially in comparison to the Tumukin Shadow. But I feel like the Vanguard room went pretty quickly, all things considered. Like, the range Vanguards are already down here. I'm able to full kill all the ones already. Let's see what the time ends up being. I think it's going to be like maybe like 3 minutes. In the Vanguard room, it's always a little frustrating. Right now, you can see that the Mage Vanguard is, you know, it has like a sliver of health. The HP bar, you can barely even see the green. But, you know, it's not done. And right here, it's 7 health. We hit, did I see that right? It was 7 health and we hit a 5. It's 2 HP. And I think right here, it actually regenerates. I hit it, it's 4 health, and I hit a 2. So, like, this is just so much extra time. Like, all it took was 1 hit, but in reality, it was like 4 or 5 hits right there. Heading into the thieving room, we make sure we have 1 inventory space so that we can immediately start picking up grubs out of the chests. And then we make our way to the trough to get that going. So that ended up being a 2:33 Vanguard, which is what I thought. Actually, no, I thought it was going to be closer to 3 minutes, but I guess not. So I think all things considered, that actually was a very fast Vanguard. So here at the thieving room, I mean, honestly, there's not much to it, right? But what is important is your inventory management at this stage. You want to withdraw all your specialty items, and when I mean specialty items, I mean the room-specific ones, like the Salve Amulet for Mystics, the Pickaxe for Guardians, and things of that nature. And when you're in a setup like this, definitely want to bring the stamina as well. So again, right here, inventory management, I'm just a little bit slower than usual. I'm like, what am I looking at? What do I need? I definitely need more restores than I typically would. In a max mage setup, you know, like honestly, like 2 restores and you're good to go. I know technically you don't need to use any restores at all for Vespula if you can line up the prayer enhanced timing, but I actually don't know how to do that. Like, I don't know if there's a specific strategy to that or if you just kind of have to like manually time it. I don't know. Another difference here is that, you know, I'm here setting up my quick prayers. I got to change augury to rigor because we're not shadowing it. We're definitely not going to be using our saying staff on this. So the Bofa is the best option here. Now, I knew from experience here that the crystal setup here at Vespula was going to take quite a bit longer. A typical Vespula with the shadow is going to be like a little bit over a minute, sometimes even sub 1 minute, I think. I don't know. I could be speaking out of my ass here, but it's definitely closer to a minute than 2 minutes. Let's just say that. But with a Bofa, it's easily going to be over 2 minutes more times than not, unfortunately. But I feel like in this instance in particular, it was just extra bad RNG. Like, I don't remember this being that bad, but yeah, so I was getting a little bit frustrated here and I was trying to be quick. One of the big differences here is that the Bofa being 4-tick, when you step out to this blue mark tile, you can actually immediately attack the portal again. The timing works out that way. With a 5-tick weapon like a Twisted Bow or a Tumukin Shadow, you do have to step on that tile and wait an extra tick before you go in. So I was trying to take full advantage of this being 4-tick, and yeah, it was a little too quick for what I was used to, and I did end up chancing myself a couple of times. Luckily, did not plank at all though, otherwise that probably would have been the run. But we did get a little bit lucky here. I didn't quite catch how many restores we initially brought, maybe like 3 in total. I think I ended up using 2, and I still have another one in the inventory, and I opted against using that one. So at this point, I was just waiting on my prayer enhance. I think in hindsight, I probably could have used this restore. Having made 3 during prep and then picking all of those up from Vanguards, I definitely had a lot. Realistically here, if you're good with managing your prayer, as long as you deposit 1 restore in the chest at thieving room so that, you know, you guarantee you have it for Ulm. You should have 2 restores for Ulm after you get through the entire raid, and that's more than enough. So that was a 2-minute 14-second Vespula. We're going to be making our way to Tightrope here, healing up as we go. And Tightrope is another room that's going to be a little bit different for us. Typically in our normal runs, you know, we don't do any fancy skipping or anything like that. We just full kill the majors and the rangers and then safely cross the rope. But in the interest of time here, you can see here, I tagged the rangers first. I'm going to be full killing the rangers and then tanking the majors. Again, the Bofa being 4-tick versus a T-bow 5-tick or the Shadow. A difference here is that with a 5-tick weapon, you would definitely want to step out of sight or out of range of these rangers each time you shoot your Twisted Bow or your Shadow in order to trade hits 1-to-1. But with a 4-tick weapon, you're going to be doing that regardless. You don't have to do any step backs or anything like that. So I'm essentially just face tanking the rangers right now. Still making the effort to swap into some ranged defense armor though in between hits. And then with the rangers out the way, I'm brewing up and swapping into some mage defense, which I think in this particular setup just means keeping my crystal on and then equipping my sang staff. And for what it's worth, I think the Inferno Cape is like a little bit better than the quiver. I think these majors were pretty humble here. Obviously, I did do this, you know, I did consider everything here. Like my overload was topped up. I have 120 defense, 120 magic. You know, I wore the right gear. I prayed mage with augury, no less. So we got through that no problem. That's pretty much what is a half skip right there. We hit the chest to quickly resupply a little bit. We definitely needed a few more brews. And then we're going to be heading to Guardians. So I just really want to hammer it home, you know, with the different gear setup, I'm not used to like what I'm looking at in my inventory. And as a result, you can see right there, you know, for the longest time, I had the crystal helmet on instead of the oath plate. And, you know, that honestly, that's a result of my crystal being colored white. And obviously my oath plate being radiant, both of it is like a white color. And the shape is kind of similar, in my opinion. So yeah. And then another mistake here is that right there, I just noticed I swapped back into the Amulet Rancor. But for about 70% of this Guardian, I had the Anguish on. So definitely missed out on max hits there. I think I like started to like notice when I maxed hit a 57. And obviously Oathplate is lower than Torva, but I was like, that didn't seem right. Like I vividly remember hitting like a 61 max hit with the Torva helm or something like that. So yeah, that did not seem right. We corrected it after 70% of the first Guardian. And then we're going to run into some gear switching issues at Vasa as well. You'll see in just a little bit here. So we finish off that Guardian and we're going to be going for the Vasa teleport skip. Even to this day, I don't have too many reps of doing this. So I'm going for it. I was a little bit nervous, to be honest. So I was like, am I going to screw this up? But luckily, we get the job done. Our overload expires, so we got to re-up on that. And unfortunately, we don't have a ZCB in this setup, right? So we do have the Burning Claws that we're going to be using on the Vasa crystals. But for the boss itself, we're just going to have to continuously Bofa it. And this was absolutely pitiful damage before the first crystal. We only did like 40, maybe not even. We dumped our claw specs here and actually did so much damage we didn't even get the third claw off. So at least good DPS on the crystal. But our Bofa continues to not do too much damage. Now, I do have experience from many years ago before all the changes to chambers. A lot of the changes, or some of the changes were here at Vasa. They definitely made Vasa easier. It's less tanky now. But if you asked me during this moment, I'd be like, yeah, they didn't do anything. Like, my Bofa was not hitting at all. But for what it's worth, back in the day when I was still grinding for my Twisted Bow, and before the Cox changes, you know, I still was running chambers. Like, if you didn't know, I have like over 1,100 challenge mode chambers, the bulk of it being solo. But anyways, I'd be doing Vasa in this exact setup here. In fact, without the quiver even, and without, you know, the new items like the averting treads. And Vasa room would almost be a guarantee of 2 teleports. Sometimes even 3. Now this was not quite as bad as that, but we couldn't finish that crystal right there, so Vasa ended up healing a little bit. And then right here with about 150 health remaining, we get teleported. So that's going to force us to brew. Unfortunately, it will take a bit of damage. And the hits were still pitiful right there. Well, I think we hit like a 1 right there into a 0. And then it hits this crystal again. So right now it's been... This is the 4th crystal, I suppose. But that's going to be the final crystal. You know, we're not going to get a 5th. You know, that's where we draw the line. We're gonna finish Vasa here, and even then, these hits were still so bad. The hits were just bad all the way through, and that ended up being a 248. I feel like a 2-minute Vasa would have been acceptable, but this was nearly 3 minutes long, which is just crazy. We pick up the brews from Vasa, definitely need those, as we did a small prep. And we haven't been too careful with our brews. We've been, you know, just keeping our health nice and high, so... Definitely need all the brews the raid offers. Equip our salve here, and we're going to be ranging the mystics. Very important to corner safe spot these guys as you can. Otherwise, the mage attacks are going to just chip away at you, and it will really add up. So the difference between this type of setup and a max setup, it's actually pretty interesting. It's a give and take. So obviously with a max setup, you're going to want to bring the shadow down here. But because you're wearing all that armor and the shadow, you have much less inventory space, so no brews. And you're not going to be using the salve. But if you don't have that setup, you're going to be bofaing it, and you can bank all your mage gear and you have all these brews, and you can bring a salve amulet. But sometimes you just end up taking a lot of damage regardless. So sometimes you wish you had more brews, and sometimes you just wish you had more damage. And yeah, mystics can end up doing a lot of damage to you, despite the best of your abilities here. But all things considered, I think mystics went pretty well. We just got to finish off this green one right here. Luckily, we didn't get punched too hard while we were running through the mystic, so there's that as well. And I think right here, as I'm working on this green mystic, in a second here, or maybe I already did, I take like a brief peek to see if the tendril spawned from the Vasa room. The tendrils didn't spawn, so we can do the tendril skip. You know, I speak about this as if this was some crucial thing, but all it really does is save you like a tick. I think, like a tick at most, so like, doesn't really matter. So right here we begin chopping the tree. We did swap in the oath plate just to be a little bit tankier with our Inferno cape on. And I do have the Sanguinesti staff in my inventory, which would be a pretty ideal weapon to use right about now. You know, the healing properties, and it is pretty accurate on the baby doll. But I don't know, I guess in the moment I just forgot I had the Sang staff on. So I didn't actually end up using it. I felt like we got that tree chop down pretty quickly, and Baby Doll was very humble. You know, we didn't actually end up taking too much damage there, I don't think. Now, typically, I would save my spec energy here to ZCB the Mama Doll, but because we don't have that on the setup, we're going to dump our Burning Claw setups. And the days before we had the ZCB, I did have Dragon Claws, or, you know, I still do, but I would bring it into the raid and spec the Baby Doll, so just a little bit different. Instead of Dragon Claws, we have Burning Claws. Swap into our range gear here, and this spot right here is a safe spot, but not really a safe spot. More times than not, the Mud Doll isn't going to turn the corner, but unfortunately, you'll see right here, that it does. This can happen, so you definitely need to stay on your toes in this room. Luckily though, we react quickly enough to protect melee, and very fortunate enough, we protected all damage. It hit a 0. I do believe it can still hit through prayer. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, regardless of whether it turns the corner or not, you gotta stay on your toes in this room here. And Exhibit A, we had to eat that last projectile right there. I don't know how much of a time loss that might have been if we ended up planking there. Probably a good minute, if I had to guess. But that's all the rooms complete. Now we're just heading into Ulm. So right now, I didn't really keep track of how many brews and restores I had, but I was just like, you know what, I gotta heal up anyways. We got 3 minutes on the overload. That I'm not sitting around waiting for that to expire. And we're not gonna re-overload. Do my best to organize my inventory here, and we do have 5 brews. We got 4 in the private right now and 1 in the inventory. 5 is the perfect number. That's always the number of brews I bring, and then 2 restores. So things ended up working out quite well in that regard, the brews and potions. But I'm definitely taking a lot of time here trying to sort out my inventory. And right now, you know, I have 4 brews in the inventory, and I'm like, I need that 5th brew, trying to figure out what to drop, and the Twisted Buckler is the correct option, I believe. Out of all things in my inventory, the first thing to drop would be the Buckler. And yes, we did bank our Bofa in favor of the Dragon Hunter crossbow. And then here we go, we get started on Ulm. Dragon Warhammer spec lands, very nice. And even if it didn't, not too big of a deal because we do have the light bearer on while we're mage running. Now, no matter how long it's been since I last did the mage running method, the 3.0, I think this is something that's always going to stick with me. It's just so simple to do. Don't get me wrong, way back in the day, it did take me a little bit to understand, especially that moment when you're going from the mage ring finger towards the left. Right here, you have to click on the mage hand and then immediately path towards the middle. That's the thing. That's the thing I didn't understand for the longest time. You're very briefly on the ring finger tile, you click the mage hand, and you click on the floor. You have to do that in quick succession there. And then, you know, sometime later, I also learned how to, like, preserve my run energy doing this. There's actually a lot of tiles you can start walking because really you just need to burn 8 ticks. You know, getting from the middle tile there to the ring finger tile and vice versa. Now, I don't think we made any mistakes here so far, but even if we did, because we have the Sanguinesti staff, it is going to heal us back up. Or it should anyways. You know, the Sanguinesti staff's like one of those things, kind of like the Blood Fury as well. It's like when you really need it to work, it just doesn't seem to work. So honestly, that felt a bit slow with the mage hand. Like, obviously, you know, much slower compared to the shadow. The shadow, you go through a couple of cycles and the mage hand is down. But I think even for a Sanguinesti staff, that felt like a slow mage hand. And when I started slashing the melee hand here, this was very strange. Like, I wasn't used to how it looked or sounded even. It's a very different sound. I think, like, I confused myself for a second there briefly at the start, and I even swapped my lance to crush because I was like, what is going on? But in full Oathblade, you definitely want to slash. And that overload timing was kind of scary there. We overloaded, and then we got hit at 32. Now, the thing about chambers and going for speed is you're going to be very reluctant to brew because there's an optimal time to brew in the raid if you didn't know, and that's every 15 seconds on your overload timer. So at 4:15 here, we would want to brew if we wanted to, and then at 4 minutes, 3 minutes 45 seconds, so on and so forth. Those are the best times to brew because those 15-second intervals, that's when the overload regenerates. So if you brew on those timings, you're never going to be brewed down. Your stats are going to stay at 120. And obviously keeping your stats up, being potted, is very important to the amount of damage you do. But on the flip side, if you don't brew, you could end up planking, and that's more of a time loss than just being briefly, not even not potted, because one brew sip, you're still going to be potted, just not at 120. This is all under the assumption that, you know, you're 99 in your stats, of course, right? So on P2 here, it seems like Mage Hand is going much quicker. Phase 1 ended up being 2 minutes and 40 seconds, which is definitely on the slower side. Like, close to 3 minutes is never good. I think even with our setup, it would be fair to expect like a 2 minute. Like, that's not too big of an ask. But 240, yeah, that was quite slow. So far on P2 though, Mage Hand already down. It definitely feels like we're pacing quicker than a 240. Not quite in cycle right now as a special comes out. And when lightning comes out doing the 4-to-1 method, I do believe you want a 3-to-1 twice. And then if you get auto twice, you want a 3-to-1 once. Now, despite the hundreds and thousands of raids I've done solos anyways, for whatever reason, if I haven't done the raid in a while, those are the two things that I always get confused very briefly. Of course, after one raid, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what I'm supposed to do. But for some reason, that's just like the first thing I forget. It's like, when do I 3-to-1 twice, or when do I 3-to-1 once? Like I said, though, I always end up remembering again, so that's good at least. And that is phase 2 complete. A 211, which is much better than the previous time, but still not great in my opinion. And I dropped the OMG in the chat right there, because this was the moment I realized I didn't have bolts for my Dragon Hunter crossbow. And if you remember, we banked our Bofa in favor of the Dragon Hunter crossbow right before we entered Ulm. So throughout this entire P3, I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? Is this run dead? We're 32 minutes in. We got 6 minutes to spare. Is that enough time? Like, what are we doing? And actually, when we get to head phase, there's absolutely nothing we can do. Literally nothing, right? So I continue to melee hand here. And then I determined, you know, there's only one way out of this. Short of just resetting the raid completely, and that's to purposely die so that I can get my Bofa out of the chest. Now, the problem with using the Bofa, not that it's bad in particular, but for me personally, I don't actually know how to efficiently use the Bofa on the head phase. In order to efficiently use the Bofa, there's a 5-to-1 method that I am not at all familiar with. In terms of the head phase, I only ever learned how to do it with a Dragon Hunter crossbow or a Twisted Bow, both of which share the same method because they're both 5-tick weapons, the 4-to-1. So right here, you know, I took a lot of damage on melee hand, and that was actually very convenient. I purposely plank here, and I hit the storage to pull out my Bofa. This was the only quote-unquote winning move here. We are 33.5 minutes in. We got 5 minutes to spare. We already did big DPS to the melee hand, so now it's just a mage hand to go. While I was mage running, you know, I had to re-overload. That was priority number 1, obviously. And then while trying to stay in cycle here, I start picking up some of my pots. I got a brew and a restore, and we're potted up already, so I felt pretty comfortable at this point. But I definitely wanted to pick up a few more of those potions from that pile before head phase started. All in the meanwhile, you know, I was trying to stay in cycle and not miss hits. And, you know, based on where I died, I didn't plan this out, but it was actually very convenient. I was actually able to stay in cycle and not miss hits while picking up those potions. It actually just like worked out so perfectly. So right here, I pick up the pots. I can still Sang Staff there and make it the Ring Finger and Sang Staff again. So we're pretty healthy now, you know, we're, what is that, 66 health. We got 2 brews in our inventory. This is perfect. We finished off the melee hand. Hits on the mage hand were a little bad here, so that was a little bit scary, and I was trying to pick up some more potions, and this, the fallen crystals happened, so a lot of damage in quick succession there, a lot going on in a little bit. But we got through it. Luckily, the mage hand didn't reset, and this is what I opted to do for the head phase, because, like I said, I don't know how to do the 5-to-1 method. I opted to do the blowpipe running method, and all it is just hit the boss, run a tile, hit the boss, run a tile. I'm going to be going, from one side to the other, so still trying to turn the head. It's going to mitigate a little bit of the damage, but for the most part here, we're kind of just face tanking Ohm. I do make a point to hit the pool right there so Ohm doesn't heal. We're going to try to just not miss hits, and we are taking some risks here. Typically, I'd be very, very safe and just brew up a little bit, but I was only brewing on my 15s or if I was about to be chanced. So right here, sitting at 30 health, I brew right there as I get hit. That was not optimal timing. You can see my stats are at 104 for a couple of seconds there, a couple of hits. But better to be alive than not, But DPS-wise, you can see that it's not bad at all. I'm not missing any hits. It's just I'm not doing it in a very effective way. If Ohm was just a little bit more rude, I'd be taking a lot more damage. But pretty humble Ohm, all things considered. And with just 20 or so health, 7 health to go, 36, what's it going to be? 36:31. The Grandmaster time is 38:30. And for our efforts, we get gold ore and uncut emeralds. Unfortunately, only 41,000 points right there because we did have to purposely plank at Ohm.